Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot of people on, and I think that there are probably going to be a few. Lots of times people will come in as we go. We've got Elizabeth in Palm Springs. We have Kelly in Los Gatos, Kristen in Denver, Kat in Milwaukee, Mike, in Alberta. So we have Canada. That's always fun. And Sam in Chicago, Andrea in Charleston. I'm so excited, you guys, to get going with this. Again, I'm Elizabeth Lyons, and we are going to launch here into how to write your book in 75 days. I have a little bit of a different approach on this webinar than I have on my other webinar, Publish a Profitable Book, which you may or may not have joined about 8 weeks ago. I like webinars. I like to participate in webinars that are actionable. So I like myself to be able to leave a webinar having taken a step or four toward whatever the goal is. And I definitely want you guys to be able to do the same. So I'd like you for the next 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have a 10 to 15 minute Q&A after that, to put your focus here. Turn everything else off, turn your ringer off on your phone, close out your browser windows, all of that. I know how distracting that can all be. And make sure that you grab a pen and a piece of paper. You'll probably want to transfer all of that later somewhere, but make sure you have it handy, because we are going to be doing some writing in about 30 minutes, if not 25. So again, you're going to leave this webinar having taken critical steps toward getting your book written. And what I'd like to know, and if you could talk to me in the chat room, is have you started down the book writing road? So have you yet started writing a book? So of course, there's just a lot of yeses. And let me know where you're stuck, because inevitably, I'm going to assume you haven't finished yet, or you probably wouldn't be here. So life gets in the way, right? Okay, so Sam is not sure how to get all the content on paper, right? Okay, so these are all common things. And then we have a no, which I love, because let's just start off real efficiently. That is always the best way to go. I want to let you know that you're in the right place if you have a story to tell or a message to share. If you get overwhelmed when you think about writing a book, if you've started and stopped and started and stopped working on your book umpteen times and you're ready for someone to hold you accountable. Do you wonder whether or not you can become a best-selling author if you don't have author credentials? Little hint, you absolutely can. And do you wonder whether or not anyone will even want to read your book once it's written? Little hint, they will. Or you justify your stalling with both of the above statements, plus your fear that the publishing process will simply be too expensive. And I'm going to encourage you to stick around until the end. Again, I'm going to keep this, I talk really fast once I get into my content, and I'm going to keep this as brief as possible because I know you guys are busy. But if you stick around until the end, I want to let you know about a fast action bonus that I have available that has a $275 value that will only be available for the next 24 hours. So let's just jump right in. Did you know that in a recent survey by the New York Times, it was revealed that 81% of those who were surveyed believe that they have a book in them, but only 1% of them ever write it? So why is that? I certainly wondered. And over the years, as I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of writers, they've weighed in. And these are the answers that I've heard the most frequently. I don't know where to start. This whole industry is so overwhelming. I don't believe that my story is interesting or relevant. I don't have time to write a book. I have no idea what to do once the book is written. So does any of that sound familiar? Again, let me know in the chat section if any of that sounds familiar. If you feel like you're thinking you're at step A of the process, right? And you need to get to step Z, but do you get so mired in what comes between B and Z that you just quit? Because you just don't know how to get there, so you just quit, and procrastination becomes your best friend. So yes, yeah. So basically everybody is saying yes, absolutely. That's what happened to me. I'm still stuck. Okay, so let's do things a little bit differently. Again, in standard webinars and a lot of the webinars that are available today, there's a lot of information, which is great and helpful, but no actionable strategies to get you on your way towards your ultimate goal. And my promise is that by the end of this webinar, you will be writing your book. There are 3 steps that we're going to go through in this webinar to get you off on the best footing for writing a successful book and getting it finally finished. The first is clarifying your why. The second is brainstorming content. And the third is to stop worrying about, we're going to fill in the blank with what you need to stop worrying about. So a little bit about who I am. Again, my name is Elizabeth Lyons. I'm a best-selling author and a writing and publishing coach. I'm also a jewelry and a product designer and a mom of 5. So as you can imagine, in order to keep writing, I have to work off of a proven process. Otherwise, it becomes just part of the very, very long to-do list. And I thought I would tell you a quick little story behind my first best-selling book. Back in 2001, or maybe it was 2000, I was pregnant. I went in for an ultrasound and there was not 1 baby, but there were 2. So I went running to Barnes & Noble. This was pre-Amazon days. I went running to Barnes & Noble to pick up anything and everything they had on raising twins. And then I found myself on the couch for a couple of months with these babies on top of me, and a little bit sad because all of the books that I had picked up simply talked about how challenging this adventure was going to be. There wasn't any humor. There was no supposed light at the end of the tunnel. And I thought, my gosh, this is so sad. There's definitely a market here for this. So I combined my love of writing, and I've been writing since the dawn of time, not the dawn of time, but the dawn of my time. I combined my love of that with what I saw to be a real need in the marketplace. And I wrote my first book, which is Ready or Not, Here We Come. And then within a few years after that, I'd say about 8 years, I wrote a second book, Ready or Not, There We Go, for the toddler years with twins. And then my last book, You Cannot Be Serious, and 32 Rules That Sustain a Mostly Balanced Mom. And then all this other stuff happened, right? So I had this light bulb moment where I thought, my gosh, I want to tell my story. I want to share my message. I really believe there's a need for this and that other people can benefit from it. I was able to do a lot of morning shows and talk shows. I ended up doing a lot of keynote speaking for corporations. I wrote my second book. I created a membership site for parents of twins. I ended up creating a product for parents, partnered with some amazing, amazing people, and then finally wrote the third book. But here's the reality of that, because when you tell a story that briefly, it makes it look as though it's just simple Simon. You write a book, you put it on the market, you hit the bestseller list, you go on the TV shows, you create a product, and life is really easy. And that's not how it went at all. So more often than not, this was me in the very beginning. I was just lost and confused and overwhelmed, and I didn't know which end was up or how to proceed. I was just completely, again, overwhelmed, confused, frankly, terrified, and unsure of myself, because the only credential that I felt I had for writing a book was that I had lived it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a psychologist. And it occurred to me that all of the people who were in the market for a book like mine would want a quote unquote expert to tell them how to get through it. So I had a lot of moments where I was really unsure of myself, putting my book out into the world and thinking that people should spend money to purchase my story and my tips. But here's the thing. In all of that overwhelm and confusion and worry, I was simply procrastinating from the first step that has to get taken care of before you can ever worry about your credibility and how to find readers and all those sorts of things. You have to get the book written. So the first requirement to getting a book written, especially as busy people, most of the writers who I talk to who want to write a book have a full-time career and or their parents. They travel a lot. They don't have the luxury of simply being able to sit down every day for 8 hours and write. So if you don't have an efficient process, writing as a non-necessity very quickly goes to the bottom of your to-do list, or it just leaves the to-do list altogether and becomes something that you'll do later. But later just gets pushed further and further out and never actually arrives. So the biggest lesson that I learned in all of this, besides the importance of having an efficient writing process, is that neglecting your why and not understanding how to brainstorm content creates three things: confusion, overwhelm, and ultimately procrastination. I'd like you to take just a minute and imagine how it will feel when you are out of the procrastination cycle, out of that how do I do this cycle. You've got the outline going, you've got the chapters going, and it's fun. It's fun to sit down and just let your story spill out without all the fears that have been holding you back. And ultimately, when you're able to put that book into published form and hold it in your hands and know that you got from point A to point, we'll call it W, because there are a few points after W to get to Z. So let's just dive right in to write your book in 75 days. The 3 critical steps to getting your book written in 75 days. Step 1 is clarifying your why. So I'd like you to tell me, why do you want to write a book? I hear a lot of different answers from authors, and they range from, I want to tell my story, to, I want to share my message. I want to document my story or my journey for myself. I want to document it for my friends and my family. Many times I talk with entrepreneurs who just want to have their message out in another format so that they can attract clients from a different geographical area. So lots of times, if you live, for example, in California and you are an accountant, I don't know if that's a good example, but you meet with clients face to face, but you'd like to be able to get your strategies out to people all across the US or even internationally. And a book becomes a great way to do that. Or a book becomes a great launching point from which to get speaking engagements, morning segments. And ultimately, I have authors say to me or writers say to me almost they're almost embarrassed to say, I want to make money. I want to make a living as a writer, or I have had a great experience. I've learned a great approach to something and I would like to make money doing it. It's my passion. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I want everyone to be really honest about why you want to write a book. So on that piece of paper that you have next to you with the pen, I'd like for you to write down at a very high level, why do you want to write a book? Another thing is, people ask me with frequency, well, should I write a book? So a question I hear a lot is, I have this experience, I went through this journey, and a lot of my friends and family say, oh my gosh, you should write a book. So Liz, should I write a book? And I say, well, I don't know. Do you think you should write a book? I don't like the word should. I've not been shy about saying that. But it's not about whether or not you should write a book. Now, if a friend or a family member is someone who sparks that initial, creates that initial spark from which you think, gosh, that sounds like a great idea. And that's happened to me. And then you get excited about it and you move forward from there. Perfection. But I always caution people, this is again where it comes back to, why are you writing a book? Is it because you have personal goals and personal dreams for what that book can do for you or do for others? Or is it because everyone else is telling you that you should? Because you've got to get concrete about it with yourself before you start moving down the path in order for it to be authentic and genuine. Another question I ask frequently is there a demand for my book? Now, I love this question, and here's why. When people ask me, is there a demand for my book? What they're asking me is, can I make money? And so my answer to this is, yes, there is a demand, and no, there isn't a demand. And here's why. I'll start with no. There is not a demand because everything has already been done, guys. There is not a topic on the planet that you can come up with, I can guarantee it, that has not already been written about. That doesn't mean it's been written about well, and it doesn't mean that there's a best-selling book on the topic, but it's already been done. So if a consumer wants to find a book about insert topic here, they can. So in that way, no, there's not a demand for your book. But there's always a demand for your book because you have a unique perspective. You have a unique personality, approach, perspective, thought process, etc., writing style. And there are always going to be hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who identify with your story and your approach and your style and your tone. And so in that way, yes, there will always be a demand for your book. But the readers for that don't just come out of thin air. And that's much further down the line. And that's where this is where people get hung up, is they say, well, okay, great. So there might be thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who want to read my book, but how do I find them? And we go back to the very beginning and I say, the first thing you have to do is write the book. In order for there to be a demand for something, it has to exist. So I want you to get that piece of paper ready, make sure you have your pen handy, and I'd like you to answer this question if you didn't already do it before. I want to write a book because, and then fill in the blank. Now, the next question that I'd like you to answer on your paper is, my timeline for getting my book available to readers is, and fill in the blank. And there's a reason that I'm asking you this question. It's not just about writing your book in 75 days. You could write your book in 5 days if you chose to, or you could take 4 years to write your book. But I have writers who come to me and they say, I have a time-sensitive topic. So should I traditionally publish? Should I seek out an agent or an editor? Should I self-publish? Should I vanity publish? What should I do? And again, that's getting much further down the path, but it's something that's important to know when you start. Is this something that you want to have available in 6 months to a year? And if the answer is yes, then traditional publishing is, I can almost guarantee, not going to work, because the average timeline for a traditionally published book to hit the market is around 18 to 24 months from the point in time when the editor acquires the title. So that's not even taking into account finding an agent and then the agent finding an editor who wants to acquire the title. So you're looking at a much longer time frame. And therefore, it's important as you're beginning your journey and you're thinking about things like, how am I going to get this out, etc., to know what your timeline is. I want my book to enhance others' lives by. This is really important because you can be, if you're writing your book for yourself, completely fine. If it's basically a journal and you want to have it in published form, that's great. I know people who have done that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. If you are looking to sell your book, if you're looking to distribute your book in any way, shape, or form, you need to know how you want your book to enhance other people's lives, because you need to be writing with that in mind. And the last question that I would like for you to answer is, I want my book to enhance my life by. And what I'm really asking you here is, what is your definition of success? So everybody's definition of success is different. And what you will find when you start any entrepreneurial venture, whether you open a business, open a restaurant, write a book, start a clothing line, is that people will ask you, oh, is that successful? Or when your friends or family tell people that you started this, they will ask, oh, are they having success with that? And what they mean is, are they financially successful? Is the venture making money? And that may very well be what your definition of success is, but it also might not. So if you want this book to enhance your life by simply letting you say, I wrote a book, I published my story, then own that. And that's okay. If you want this book to enhance your life because it allows you to have a part-time income from something that you love, there you go. If you want it to enhance your life by allowing you to write full-time and travel the country or the world speaking and inspiring and empowering others, then that's really important too. But these areas are all part of your why, and they're all part of the critical first step in writing a book, because they will all influence the way in which and the tone from which you write that book. Your why is critical to determining your publishing and your marketing approaches. And again, that definitely comes later. We don't need to worry about how you're going to publish or how you're going to market, but it will affect how you write the book. So secondly, before we get into actually the outlining, I want to talk about a few areas that I don't want you to focus on while you are working on writing your book. And I'm going to bet that many of you are focusing in these areas, and it's going to unnecessarily delay you getting your book written. The first one is, don't edit anything. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about structure. Don't worry about punctuation. Don't worry about flow. Don't worry about chapter organization. Don't worry about anything. Just write. It's so much about just getting the content out of your head and onto paper. The editing comes later. The organization comes later. Right now, the overwhelming part is you have all these thoughts and ideas and tips and tricks and words of wisdom and stories in your head, and you need to get those out of your head and onto paper where they actually can be organized. The second, do not worry about order. Do not think, oh my gosh, should this go first? Should this go last? Should this, should I have a preface? Again, that is all part of the editing process. And when we get really hung up on the order that it goes in, it's just a way for us to stall. That's all it is. And finally, do not think about chapter titles. So a question I get a lot has to do with chapter titles. I love brainstorming. I've said it before, I will buy a book simply because it has a great title or a great cover. I don't even care what the book is about. But people get really hung up on chapter titles. And what's interesting is that the exercise that we're going to start here in about 2 minutes is one where, ironically, by the end of it, and I don't mean by the end of this workshop, but by the end of working through this process, authors have a title. It comes through this process. But this is the whole putting the cart before the horse thing. So we think we want to write a book and we worry so much about marketing and titles that we don't sit down and write the book. Okay, so let's move into the actionable part of this, which is brainstorming content. So again, paper and pen. There's no reason to wait, guys. Let's just start your book outline right now. So tell me, do you become completely overwhelmed at the thought of getting the content out of your head and onto paper? Just put something over in the chat room and let me know. Do you get completely overwhelmed at that thought? So yes. Okay. So basically, yes. So Jan is saying, I have so many thoughts into my head. I have Post-it notes everywhere. And you're a woman after my own heart, because I also have Post-it notes everywhere, all over the wall. And Mike is saying he also has Post-it notes. And a lot of people do this online. So notes in the iPhone or recordings in the iPhone. I mean, the whole thing, it just feels overwhelming, right? Because you get these great ideas. And if you're anything like me, you get them while you're in the shower, or you get them while you're driving down the highway at 80 miles per hour. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it right then and there. So I was so excited to get this message from Brandy a little bit ago. Brandy was actually part of the first launch of Write Your Book in 75 Days. And she said, I finished an outline that I tried to create several times, but always wound up giving up in less than 3 hours. So relieved. Liz's approach made such a daunting and overwhelming project extremely simple. That was an awesome, awesome message to get, because honestly, it is daunting and overwhelming, but it's also simple when we sit down and we have a step-by-step project or a process for getting through. So here's what I want you to do. Take a blank piece of paper, turn your paper over if you only got one, and divide it into 8 sections. So it can look like this, it can look like this. I don't really care. Just make sure you've got 8 sections. We're just going to start with 8. That does not mean, by the way, that you're only going to have 8 chapters or 8 topics or anything of that nature. Don't overthink it. We're just going to start with 8. Now in box number 1, I want you to write some high-level verbiage that fills this, that answers this. I remember that time when I had a great aha moment. So if you're thinking about your journey, what was a time, and if you can't think of anything right now, if you're like me, when you're under the gun to think of something right in that moment, it's like, I can't do this. Just write this down in the box. A time when I had a great aha moment. So when you were going through something and all of a sudden something clicked. Someone said something to you that clicked. You heard a quote that made, a ton of sense to you. And the reason I'm asking you to do this is because within the course of your book, you're going to tell stories. That's the best way to relate to your readers, is to tell stories. And in many cases, your readers are going to see themselves in those stories. Maybe they didn't have the exact same experience, but something similar happened. They had a quote that touched them, or your quote is going to touch them, whatever the case may be. But talk about a time when you had a great kind of now it's all coming together moment. In the second box, I want you to say, I want my audience to know, fill in the blank. So what is it that you want your audience to know in terms of everything's going to be fine? You're going to make it through to the other side. This situation is more bark than bite. Sales aren't as hard as, even if you're an introvert, you can become a great salesperson. What is the thing that when you were going through your journey, you felt like you didn't know if that were true, and now you do know that it's true. So what is it that you want your audience to know? And then in box 3, I want you to write your number one how-to. So when I started writing Ready or Not, Here We Come, which was the guide to twins, there were all kinds of things that I didn't know how to do. I had a daughter, but I had never had twins. So I didn't know how to feed them both at once. I didn't know how to, deal with them both at once when they were screaming at 3 a.m. What is something that you absolutely didn't know how to handle before you went through your own journey, whether personal or entrepreneurial, that you know that you can now teach others? Okay, so an interesting comment just came in from Carrie for box number 2. I want my audience to know that being a parent and a friend isn't any more difficult than not, but the results are more rewarding. So, perfect. I mean, because that's something that you absolutely can't know going into this whole parenting thing, right? Box number 4 is another how-to. You undoubtedly have about 1,000 of these. I mean, really, they can be practical how-tos or they can be emotional how-tos. So it can go everything from how to feed 2 babies at once, if you're looking at my example, or something emotional, like how to, handle the loss of something, a different perspective that you can put on it, a different way to look at something. Okay, box 5 is one of my favorites. So my greatest struggle or challenge to which I couldn't find an answer or a solution was. This is one of the main places where your book will stand out, your message will stand out. So again, going back to my example of the twins, I couldn't find any humor, right? But when I talk to other people, I just worked with someone on a book, he actually sells cars. And he was not able to find a solution for how the car business found him. So if you are not an innately comfortable salesperson, how do you become one? How do you take a failing car dealership and make it one of the top 5 in the nation? That was his greatest struggle or challenge, and he couldn't find a solution. So he created his own, and now he's got this unique space in which he can let other people know, this is how I found, this is how I solved my problem, and this is how you can do it too, because his solution is very applicable across the board. So when you were going through something, what kept you up at night and you just thought, my God, why will no one create a solution to this for me? And then had to create your own. So box 6, mantra. Do you have a mantra? Or, that word is kind of overused, but a quote or a saying for others going through the same journey. Now, you may or you may not, and you may come up with this over time, but this is, again, something that will make you stand out. So I know there are a lot of cliche, the only way out is through, and you're going to make it, and all these kinds of, those are kind of cliche. But in all likelihood, there was something. And I know this because people tell me what theirs was in the end. And lots of times they don't know it when they're going through it. But once they come out the other side and they're actually in the process of writing, it just comes to them and they think, oh my gosh, I said that all the time to myself. I always reminded myself of that word. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, whatever the case may be. And then you can go, once you have that in a box, you can expand upon that. How did that mantra or that quote help you? What are some stories around it? What was a funny experience having to do with it? But again, we're just getting really high level stuff here. Box 7 is, I remember that time when I felt sad or confused or lost. So one thing that's really important, and I just did a podcast this morning and we were talking about this, the importance of being willing to be vulnerable as a writer. If you are an entrepreneur and you have achieved unprecedented success as an entrepreneur, there was a time when you struggled, period. Because there's a time when everyone did. No one just suddenly becomes this wildly successful entrepreneur overnight. If you went through something personal that was emotional, and you're on the other side of it now, and you're in a position to help other people who are going through something similar. There was a time when you were really vulnerable, and telling those stories helps your audience to know that you're a real person. It helps them identify with you and relate to you. And that is part of what creates an authentic and genuine relationship with your audience that will not only create a rapport and have them buy your book, but it also it's not just about getting people to buy your book and then be gone. You're looking to build relationships in this digital world that we now live in. It's so rewarding to build authentic, genuine relationships with people who are then on for the long, they're there for the long haul. And you can assess what their needs are today and continue to respond to those if you so choose. But if you think about a time or two when you really just felt alone or like you just didn't know what the heck to do, and you include a story, don't dwell on it, don't make it the 100, don't make it 95% of your book. But if you include a story or two in there, being vulnerable is important. And finally, for box 8, think about who else played a pivotal role in your journey, because we don't ever get anywhere by ourselves. So it may have been a professional mentor. It may have been a mentor who you've never even met, but you met digitally. You follow them on Facebook, you follow them on their website, you read their blogs, you read their emails. They've stood the test of time in terms of their message and their authenticity. It may be a friend or a family member. Who else played a pivotal role? Because you can dive into that more deeply over time, and you can tell stories about it. You can use the lessons that are learned from that individual to parlay lessons to your readership. So all of these, even though they're high-level boxes, they can actually each transition into multiple subtopics. And I don't want to call them chapters because people get really focused on, oh gosh, is this a chapter? Is this a chapter? Is this a chapter? I have a chapter in Who Cannot Be Serious. I don't know Who Cannot Be Serious, but in You Cannot Be Serious, that's literally 2 paragraphs long. So I'll just answer the question right now that inevitably comes up. Is there such a thing as how long does my book have to be, and how long do my chapters have to be, and how many chapters do I have to have? There's no right answer to that. I address that in other platforms, and I will put a blog out or a blog post out on Publish a Profitable Book on the Facebook page that addresses that. But there's no magic answer. So if you have an area that you think is really funny or touching or important, inspiring, empowering, whatever, and you want to write 1 paragraph about it, and you ultimately decide to make that a standalone chapter, totally cool. Glennon Melton from Monastery, one of her last books, I think it was Carry On Warrior, I do believe that she has a chapter that is 2 sentences long. And that is absolutely fine. You know why? Because it works with her personality. There are no rules. I should say there are very few rules. So yes, you're going to see the number of 80,000 words. And that is what the big 5, that's what traditional publishing kind of goes by, because that is the average. But that does not mean that your book has to be 80,000 words. It doesn't mean that it can't be 40 and that it can't be 200. Although 200 would be a very long book. But so now once you've got these 8 boxes filled in, and once you've maybe even started to dissect those 8 boxes into some slightly smaller boxes, you can take some lines and draw them off each box and have some subtopics. There's your major outline. Now, that does not mean that that's your whole book right there, but that's a huge part of it. That is where you get started. There's this old adage that I can't stand, but I can't think of a good substitute about you eat an elephant 1 bite at a time, which again makes no sense to me on several levels. But if you think about the whole thing at once, it's just overwhelming. But this is how, okay, we got to get rid of the elephant analogy, because now I want to say this is how you eat the leg, but that's not, this is just how you start at the very top and work your way down. If you want to walk up Mount Everest, don't think about needing to get all the way to the top. Think about getting to the first base camp. That's all any of those guys are focused on in the beginning, is just getting to base camp number 1. So that's all you need to focus on for right now, is getting to base camp number 1. And base camp number one in the process of writing a book is having a major outline from which to dive deeper. The last thing I want you to do, and this is really important, is set a date. So for Write Your Book in 75 Days, we legitimately go with a 75-day date. Deadlines as a writer are critical. Even if you're a full-time writer and that's all you do, the deadlines are critical. Without deadlines, I mean, think about it. We all use our calendars for everything. It has to be scheduled. I promise you that. So here's what I want you to do right now. On that piece of paper, I want you to write a date by which you are going to have your raw manuscript. Let's forget the raw manuscript. I want you to write a date by which you're going to have your outline completed. And I would like it to be within the next 3 weeks, because there is no reason that you can't get that done. I have 5 kids and I run another business society. I'm doing it. That's how I do it. You have to do it that way. So even if you schedule 10 minutes a day to brainstorm or 20 minutes every 3 days, put it on your calendar, break it out. Don't suddenly find yourself the night before that date going, oh my God, I haven't worked on the outline since I last talked to Liz. I want you to put that date down and set manageable goals to getting there and commit to getting your outline finished by that date so that we can then move forward with the best part. So I'd like you guys to write in the comments. I want you to commit right now, because when we write these things down, they become really real. So write in the chat for me, by what date are you committing right now to have your book outline finished? Because I'm working on a new one right now, and I will let you know that I am having my mine finished by October 14th, which is scary because I'm pretty sure that's in is that in 2 weeks? A little more than 2 weeks, with all the other things going on. Okay, so Jan is saying October 23rd. That's good. That's in less than 3 weeks. I'm good with that. So we have October 19th, October 21st. Kelly, I'm waiting on you to weigh in because I know you're getting this done. So Sam is October 5th. I like that. That's quick. So I'm glad you're motivated. And I know that what you're wondering now probably is, okay, what now? So I've set this date and I'm ready to go, but now what do I do? I don't even know. I've got these 8 boxes. What do I do from here? You've got 2 options. The first option is you can get completely overwhelmed and procrastinate. Again, I absolutely adore this second little meme here. Procrastination was an Olympic sport. I compete in it later. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Or you can let me help you reach the finish line. So again, you're here because you know you have a book inside of you, but you don't believe you have time to actually write it. Or the above, plus you get so overwhelmed every time you think about the process that you find anything else to do. And or you need an accountability or motivation partner who can calm you down when you think you aren't good enough to write a best-selling book and motivate you when you start to lose momentum. I promise that writing a book is not nearly as overwhelming as you likely believe. You simply need a step-by-step process, a support system, and an accountability partner or partners. It's time to simply stop dreaming about writing a book and write one already. So I'd like to introduce you to Write Your Book in 75 Days. It's the proven step-by-step blueprint to getting your book finally written. Now, there are 3 course modules in the course. The first is Determine Your Why. And we started doing this a little bit during this workshop. But this is where you're going to hone the critical mission and vision of your book. And it's going to allow you to sniper focus your efforts as you're as you're writing, as you're ultimately publishing, and as you're marketing. So all the questions that I asked you in the beginning of this workshop, this module dives much more deeply into helping you clarify exactly what your why is. Module 2 is an extension of the exercise that we just did on creating book structure. So you're going to learn the low stress approach to getting high to low level book content out of your head and into outline form. And my favorite part probably of module 2 is the bonus on Evernote, the how-to guide to Evernote. If you're not familiar with Evernote, this is a software, it's a free software that I use for outlining my books. A lot of authors also use it to write their books. I use it just to outline, but that's completely personal choice. And I have a 17 or so minute video, bonus video in module 2 that literally walks you right through from signing up to an account to how to use Evernote to create your outline and keep it organized. You can sync it up with your phone so that when you are driving on the highway at 80 miles per hour and you want to pull over, please pull over and enter a new chapter idea, topic idea, story, quote that you've thought about. It will sync right up to your computer and everything will be in the same place for you later when you go back to work on your book again. I actually walk you right through my own personal author folder within Evernote. And then module 3 is the most fun. It's the actual writing, the how and the when. So when I coach writers and they get their outlines finished, that's when panic attack number 4 sets in, because it feels like, oh my gosh, I have to break this out now into actual full sentences. So I give you multiple approaches to identifying and scheduling a lifestyle specific approach to going from outline to completed manuscript. Believe me, I get it. I get that your lifestyles are all different. They're busy. Not everyone can or wants to get up at 4 a.m. to write. I'm one of those people. I would write complete garbage if I got up at 4 a.m. Not everyone can schedule it every single day. But the key is you have to have a schedule. So I actually walk you right through my own personal schedule. I show you how to create little snippets of time if that works best for you, how to get your deadlines all established, where to get your deadlines established, how to remind yourself so that you can keep yourself completely on track through the entire writing process. And if starting to write in full form, full sentences feels too overwhelming, I even give you options for how to do it differently so that you don't have to do that. What will you create from this course? Well, you will create a solid foundation, a thorough understanding of the critically important why behind your book project. You will also create your book outline, an efficient and fluid outline of your book's content. Fluid meaning that it's moving, it's ever changing. You can move things in, move things out, move things around. That's the whole point. Nothing's set in stone. You may end up having things in your outline that don't even go into your book in the end. But you will get all of the stories, messages, and lessons out of your head and organized. You will create a writing schedule and approach, so a lifestyle-specific writing approach along with a customized writing schedule with manageable deadlines. So I'm not going to tell you that you have to write every single day for the next 75 days. I know that's not manageable. And I know how overwhelming it is when you have something on the schedule 3 days in a row, or I should say every day, and you miss days 1 and 2. Now you just feel like days 1 and 2 are sitting on top of you like lead. That does not work. So I teach you how to create manageable deadlines that don't make you feel overwhelmed. And most exciting, you're going to create your raw manuscript. So your story, your message, finally written. With the course, you get 2 training workbooks. Both of them are downloadable and printable. So however works best for you, you can download them and put them in a binder. You can just download them to your desktop and reference them that way, wherever works best for you. Accountability emails. This is a big one. I have taken many courses over the course of my career, and there are certain things that I love about the ones that were my favorite. One of them is that the course leader doesn't just disappear the minute I enroll in the course. I'm not going to bombard you every day because, again, that's really overwhelming. But you will receive emails from me every 4 to 6 days with empowering stories, inspiring stories, tips, tricks. I'm going to check in on you. You will have access to me. You'll be able to email with me. You can ask any of my current students. They email me and they always say, I feel so bad emailing you. And I say, why? Please do. The course is 100% online, which means that even though I'm going to hold you accountable and I'm going to give you deadlines, ultimately you can work at your own pace and you have unlimited access to the course. So after 75 days, you not lose your access. There's no, oh gosh, I hope you can get it done in 75 days. I believe you can get it done in 75 days. But if life takes over and you need to take a little break for a few weeks, you can get right back into it whenever the timing is right for you. There are 3 detailed training modules within the course. They're all video-based. There's the Evernote software training that I just mentioned. And then there's also a members-only Facebook mastermind group. And this is the second bonus that I have found to be valuable as a course taker myself. It is so helpful to get into a mastermind group with only people who are taking a course. You can bounce ideas off of one another. I jump in there from time to time. I make videos. I will respond to personal questions. We hold everybody accountable. And most importantly, we support one another, because this does get overwhelming. And it is easy to start questioning yourself about 72 to 96 hours in about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And it's wonderful to have a place where you can go, where the people who are there understand you and they get you because they've probably been there. And if they haven't, they're going to be next week. So that is a great benefit to being able to have that kind of group networking and community support. I mentioned at the beginning this fast action bonus, which is only going to be available until midnight tonight. And it's a 1-hour live Q&A session with me. So you can ask me anything. And this will be a group session. So if it gets too big, we'll split it into 2 or 3. But I love that. I get uncomfortable when I put quotes from or testimonials from course participants up here. So I'm not even going to read this. I'll just let you read it. But I've been told I should put them there anyway. I try really, it's very important to me to have an authentic relationship with everyone, all of my students. I can't necessarily get in front of you in a coffee shop unless you're in Phoenix, but this is the best way to do it. So we'll have a live 1-hour Q&A session where you can send me your questions in advance so that I'm fully prepared to answer them. And they can be anything. It doesn't just have to be about the writing process. It can be about the publishing process, about the marketing process, about your fears, about this, that, or the other thing, whatever it is. And we're going to jump on for an hour to an hour and a half. And I'm just going to answer everybody's questions. And then you can bring your new questions there. So that's the fast action bonus for those of you who join by midnight tonight. And again, it's a $275 value. So are you ready? I had this great email from Jillian, who was part of the very first, she was actually part of the beta launch of Write Your Book in 75 Days. And she was on the fence and she said, I was planning to tell you that I'm too stretched for time. Maybe I'll revisit it in a year or so. But then that gut feeling whispered, don't chicken out. I'm busy. I'm tired. I have laundry that is never done and I have dishes to wash. Life is hard. There are plenty of excuses, but there will never be a time when most of those things aren't true. So I'm ready to start now. And that's what I find happens so frequently. We think, I'll get to this later. I'll use the fine china later. But there's no better time to start than right now. Right now is really all we have. So I know what you're wondering, which is, what's the investment? The total value of the program with the modules, the bonuses, and this is excluding the fast action bonus, by the way, is $679. But your investment is just one payment of $197. So you can get started today. It's one payment for lifetime access of $197. I just switched numbers around for a second by going to publishaprofitableBook.com/write. That'll take you right, no pun intended, to the sales page. And because I love to walk you guys through everything step by step, I want you to see exactly what you're going to see when you get there. So this is the page that you will see first when you go to publishaprofitableBook.com/write. And if you scroll down a little bit, it's going to look like this. Now, those days and numbers are going to count down until course enrollment closes. It closes a week from today. And if you would like to, you can click the Enroll Now button. That'll take you right to the payment section, or you can continue to scroll down and read and get even more information about testimonials over the course. And then this Enroll button will pop up several times as you're scrolling down the page. Once you click the Enroll Now button, this is what you will see. And then once you click to enroll, you'll see the secure checkout. You do everything right here. And once you click to enroll, this is where you will be taken right to your members area. So I have a video at the beginning that explains, it's me explaining how to navigate the site, where all your modules are, where all of your bonuses are, where all of your resources are, where to go if you have questions, how to get into the private Facebook mastermind group, etc. I get asked if there's a money back guarantee, and of course there is, because here's the deal. I don't want your money if I can't help you. I really don't. I believe that this process works. It worked for me. It works for me. It continues to, and it's worked for a lot of other authors that I've coached. So if you show me that you did the required work from the first 2 modules and you're still not satisfied, I will more than gladly refund your purchase. Now, if you need help enrolling or if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email me. Here's my email right here, elizabeth@publishaprofitablebook.com. And I'm even going to do something differently during this webinar that I haven't done before, a little nervous, which is give you my personal cell phone number so that you can text me with questions. I actually was on a webinar a few months ago, and I had never seen anyone do this, but the gentleman who was hosting the webinar posted his phone number and said, text me with questions. And I thought that is really smart, because if you're new to me or you're new to Publish a Profitable Book, you may very well want to just have that extra added comfort of making that connection directly with me. And I want you to be able to do that. So please don't hesitate to text me over the next several days or whenever. If you ever have any questions about the course, specifically about writing a book, etc., I would love to connect with you. So for the next 10 minutes, we're basically going to go through just a Q&A, and I'm going to invite you to put your Qs into the chat box, and I'm going to have Karen monitoring that for me. This was a great quote that I received last week from Marlene, who's a current course participant, and I just made my day. I'm not going to lie. So while we're waiting on the questions to come through, I have a question that I get often, and I want to address it, because if you're not thinking about it right now, you may think about it later. And that's, how much time do you have to commit each day? I understand this, guys. I get that your time is a little bit nuts and needs to be fluid. So in module 3 of the course, as I mentioned, I teach you a manageable way to set up blocks of time that work for you. For some of you, it's going to be 20 minutes while you're sitting in the carpool line, and that is fine. For some of you, it's going to be 2 hours one night a week, and that is fine. The other thing I teach you how to do is how to move those chunks of time. So let's say you've scheduled 20 minutes in the carpool line, and then you get an emergency call from someone and you really need to take it. And so that 20 minutes doesn't work. I'm going to teach you how to move it. And I'm also going to teach you why it's important not to do back-to-back scheduling if you can avoid it. And yes, it definitely has something to do with the fact that when you miss too many days of anything, you just get completely overwhelmed. It's the same thing with working out. If you tell yourself, I'm going to go every day for 30 days, and then you miss 2 days, you think, well, I just blew that. So it just derails you from the entire thing. Okay, so Kristen, do you address how to title the book? In this course, no. However, you are, when we start thinking about titling the book, we're again thinking multiple steps down the road. So what I will tell you is that, as I mentioned before, when you're in module 2, many times authors' title and or subtitle comes to them. And it may change up a little bit over time, but something hits them where they just say, that's it. That's what happened to me with You Cannot Be Serious. As I was writing You Cannot Be Serious, this was when I was past the outline portion, but I was writing, and I kept having stories where I would say, you cannot be serious. And I thought, well, there you go. There it is. But that never would have occurred to me at the very beginning. So we're back to putting the cart before the horse on that. But title is extremely important. And that is something that I address in another workshop, in another course. And so you can look forward to that. And I do have some posts up in publishaprofitablebook.com on the blog about titles and how important titling is. Because it's not the be-all, end-all, but it's definitely something that you want to give some thought to, not only for the tone of your book, but honestly for the SEO or the search engine optimization of your book. Because whether you know it or not, and I didn't know it till a couple of years ago, Amazon is now a full-fledged search engine. It's not just a store anymore. So you want to think about it, about the title of your book, but you certainly don't want to compromise the style and the tone of your book just in order to have a keyword-friendly title. That's crazy. So yes, we talk about that in more detail later on. And Kristen, if you want to email me about that separately, please feel free to do so. Okay, so Carrie, what do I do when I'm finished? I love you, Carrie. So, okay, let's get the book written. But here's the thing. I actually created Write Your Book in 75 Days because of this. The first course that I created and launched, my flagship course, is called Publish a Profitable Book. And what it does is it takes you from the editing step all the way to the publishing step. Till you have that book in your hands and you're out and you're figuring out how to market it and launch it and get it out to the world and get other things on the back end of it. What happened was that launched really well. But what I heard from a lot of people was, I really want to take this course, but I don't have a book yet to send to edit. And so I realized, my gosh, there's a huge group of people here that has a message to share or a story to tell, but they don't have the means through which yet to do it. And so that's why I created Write Your Book in 75 Days, so that you guys can get that part out of the way. And then, if you so choose, move into Publish a Profitable Book, the Publish a Profitable Book course. Okay, so Debbie, how long do I have to finish? Well, Debbie, you have forever. I don't want you to take forever, and I am most definitely going to encourage you through accountability emails, etc., to get to the finish line of getting the book written, of getting your raw manuscript written, so that you are ready to put it in front of a qualified editor who can help with punctuation, grammar, flow, missing pieces, etc. Editing is one of my greatest passions. It's one of the things I love talking about the very, very most. But in order to move into that, you have to have a finished manuscript. Now, I want you to get through that in 75 days. That's the goal of this, but you have forever. So you have unlimited lifetime access once you become a member of the course. You have unlimited access to the Facebook group. You have unlimited access to the course content. And that also means, by the way, that as the course continues to evolve over time, and it will, you will always have access to the latest and greatest updates and upgrades. So as I add more bonuses, as I add interviews, as I add resources, as I hone content, all of that, you will still have access to, even at the $197 price point. And as I continue to do that, that price point will also continue to go up. So I have made the choice on several occasions of getting in on courses where I really felt in my gut that it was the right choice, the right course for me. I knew I may not be ready to start for 3 or 4 months, but I wanted in at that price point because I knew I was going to do it ultimately. And I thought, well, gosh, the course is only going to get better. The content is only going to get better. So I'm just going to launch in now and get to it when I get to it. And in one instance, I actually didn't plan on starting for about 4 months, but I watched the first video and it was almost like a Netflix binge. I got so excited. And then I watched the next video. And before I knew it, I had watched all the videos and was going back and re-watching everything in order to actually dive in. So the way the content was developed got me so excited that I was actually able to finish the whole thing much more quickly than I thought. And that particular course is adding new things all the time. You know, the industry of writing and publishing a book is constantly changing. I think of it like Facebook ads. There's new stuff coming up all the time. And so what's fun, and I guess, I don't know if fun is a great word, but what's very helpful about that particular course, that course, by the way, is on Facebook ads. So again, with Facebook changing all the time, if I needed to put the course on pause for 2 months and I go back in, I know I'm getting the latest and greatest. I'm not going in there and learning about something that was effective 2 months ago, but now is no longer even active. You can't even do it anymore. So that's a great benefit, in my opinion. That's one of the things that I've learned from being a member of courses. And I think that's valuable, that I've taken a lot of courses and I know what works for me and what doesn't work for me and what works for other people, because I've been able to implement that into this course. So, okay, Tim, how do I get readers? Great question. And this is a great fear, frankly, of especially first-time writers, is not only how do I get the book written, but then how do I find people who are going to want to read it? And that is something that, again, comes later. But I do want to address it because I feel as though authors, writers, and you are an author, you know, people say, well, I'm an aspiring author. And I say, please remove the word aspiring. Like, just start writing. Just write once upon a time on a piece of paper. Now you're an author. It's not about being a published author or a non-published author. If you're writing a book, if you've written a book, you're an author. So people feel concerned about, well, if I write the book and I don't have anyone to read it, what's the point? I promise you that there are people, a lot of people who will want to read your book, who will value reading your book, who will value your insights and your story and your experience and your tips and your wisdom and all of that. And there are some very concrete step-by-step. The thing about writing and publishing a book is this. The writing is actually the easiest part. The reason people think it's the hardest part is because it's the most overwhelming and it requires discipline. And that's why I put this course together, because it keeps you disciplined and it keeps you accountable. The publishing part, the marketing part, the getting readers part, that is programmed. That is step by step. No, you don't just send out an email and all of a sudden you have 10,000 readers. But there is a proven step-by-step approach to creating an email list and getting readers, creating a blog and getting readers, promoting that blog, guest blogging, being a guest on podcasts, all kinds of things, creating lead magnets. And if anybody's getting super overwhelmed with what I'm saying right now, not just let it go. Because I promise these are all step-by-step processes that in the end, I just walk through and say, do this, do this, do this, do this. And that's what Publish a Profitable Book is all about, is getting to that point. But it doesn't matter where your readers are when you don't have anything for them to read. So while your book ends up in edit, while your book is being edited, that's when you can start all that other back end stuff. That's a great time to multitask and let someone else be working on perfecting the tone, the style, the grammar, the flow, the content, while you are out letting people know, hey, guess what? I have this book coming out and here's how it can help you. So I hope that this has been incredibly valuable for you guys. I'm actually extraordinarily impressed with myself that I stayed at exactly an hour. I don't think I've ever done that. So again, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free. If you have any issues, questions, concerns, you can email me at elizabeth@publishaprofitablebook.com. I've got my phone number right there. That's my direct cell phone number. You can text me on that. And the only reason I say text and not call is because I never answer the phone if I don't recognize the number, because the telemarketing situation is out of control. But text me, let me know who you are and what your question is, and I will get back to you within 2 hours. I promise that. As long as I'm not picking up kids, I am yours. Please feel free to join our Publish a Profitable Book main community over at Facebook, which is facebook.com/Publish a Profitable Book. We just put lots of tips and tricks and resources and great podcasts. We are constantly curating the best of the best information out there so that you don't have to. So that's our goal, is to keep you unoverwhelmed through this whole thing. But thank you so much for joining me, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys again soon.